It's the snap election no one predicted. But this day fortnight, Northern Ireland will go to the polls. One big difference this time round is the number of MLAs to be elected, reduced from 108 to 90. And it means that more than ever, every vote is crucial. Many of you watching this may be undecided on how you're going to vote. Well, tonight, our politicians will try and persuade you just why you should vote for them. With me, representatives of the 5 larger political parties in Northern Ireland, the Ulster Unionist Party leader, Mike Nesbitt, the leader of Sinn Féin in Northern Ireland, Michelle O'Neill, the leader of the DUP, Arlene Foster, the Alliance Party leader, Naomi Long, and the leader of the SDLP, Colm Eastwood. This is the UTV election debate, and that's our panel. Well, hello there. A very good evening to you all. While the talking is underway here, the conversation will no doubt be happening online too, and our Twitter hashtag is Vote17. Now, before the debate begins proper, each party representative will make an opening statement, and the order of speakers, that was determined in a random draw on Monday night's View from Stormont's programme. Each speaker will have 45 seconds. The first representative to deliver an opening statement is Mike Nesbitt, the leader of the Ulster Unionist Party. Mike Nesbitt.
This election should be a referendum on how the 2 parties of the executive handled the ongoing crisis of renewable heat and their leadership over the last 10 years. With £85,000 a day still needlessly going up in smoke, I don't think you can afford another DUP Sinn Féin executive with its incompetence, arrogance, cronyism and the whiff of corruption. But happily, you don't have to, because for the first time you can vote for change and support the Ulster Unionist Party. And we'll be different because we will be willing partners, sharing space, power and responsibility in a spirit of reconciliation, tolerance, trust and mutual respect.
Mike Nesbitt, thank you. Well, next up, it's the turn of the leader of Sinn Féin in Northern Ireland. That's Michelle O'Neill. Michelle O'Neill.
Dave, Sinn Féin didn't seek this election, but it is necessary because of DUP arrogance, contempt and serious allegations of corruption surrounding their RHI scandal. Martin McGuinness was the only person who could call time on all of that, and he stepped Arlene Foster aside. He did so because it was the right thing to do. The public have a right to demand integrity in their government, to see all citizens treated with equality and respect, to see agreements and commitments implemented. Sinn Féin want to deliver in the Assembly, deliver more jobs, deliver a reformed health service, and an Assembly that builds bridges in our divided society. Timwidge Igdal Hun Hussey. We are moving forward. That is what Sinn Féin is going into this election and subsequent negotiation to achieve. That is what I'm asking the public to endorse when they go to the polls on March the 2nd.
Thank you, Michelle O'Neill. Well, the next speaker is the leader of the DUP, Arlene Foster. Arlene Foster.
At this election, your vote matters. Your vote will decide which party is returned to Stormont with the most seats and who will set the future direction for Northern Ireland. Only the DUP or Sinn Féin will be in this position. And if you want the DUP to have the most seats so that we can stand up for you and for Northern Ireland, so we can deliver our plan to grow the economy and create more jobs, and work with our government to get the best Brexit deal, then vote DUP. This election will be very close. There's a real chance that Gerry Adams' Sinn Féin could have the most seats. Then they would push ahead with their radical agenda, and imagine what that would mean for Northern Ireland. A vote for any other Unionist party will only strengthen Sinn Féin. So the choice you have is simple. It's between Gerry Adams' Sinn Féin and your DUP.
Arlene Foster, thank you. Naomi Long, the leader of the Alliance Party, will deliver our next opening statement. Naomi Long.
Yet again, Stormont has collapsed. It's happened under the UUP and SDLP and now the DUP and Sinn Féin. Alliance didn't choose to be here, but it gives you an opportunity to take a stand against scandal, to say enough is enough to Orange and Green, to ensure those who got us into this mess can never do it again. No more corruption, no more cronyism, no more incompetence, just good government, good relations, good prospects, good services and good leadership. We can transform our broken politics. This is the opportunity, but you need to grasp it. On March the 2nd, vote Alliance. Together we can change Northern Ireland for good.
Thank you, Naomi Long. Well, Colm Eastwood, the leader of the SDLP, will deliver the final of our closing speeches. Colm Eastwood.
You've already heard plenty of spin and distraction tonight. I know that some of you will already be tempted to switch off. But let me tell you the truth of why this debate is important and why this election is important. One person on this panel designed a scheme that is costing us all £500 million. Another person on this panel let them away with it. Don't be fooled. This is not an election about old battles. It is about the person on this panel who has cost taxpayers £500 million. It is about a government that has collapsed and failed again. On March the 2nd, you have the power to change this government. You have the power to elect a new government that can finally work. Please use that power.
Colm Eastwood, thank you, and thank you to all of our candidates. Well, the first part of our debate this evening is centred on just how we got here and why this election is happening. If I can come to you first, Michelle O'Neill, we are in this position because Sinn Féin basically collapsed the institutions. What is it you're hoping to achieve?
Well, we're in this position because of an RHI scandal that was signed, sealed and delivered by the DUP. DUP that withheld information deliberately from their partners in government and indeed from all the other parties. So really why we're in this scenario is not of our making. It is absolutely because of the arrogance, the contempt, the approach of the DUP in relation to what was an absolutely flawed scheme that's going to see potentially £500 million being lost out of the public purse. That's not acceptable. I don't think anybody in their right mind in any part of the world would tolerate being in a government with people who actually carried out that action.
Arlene Foster.
Well, of course, this election is not about the RHI scheme. It may be the excuse, but it's not the reason, and we can see that very clearly in all of the literature that has been put forward by Sinn Féin. It's about Gerry Adams' plan to bring forward a radical Republican agenda into Northern Ireland. That's what he wants to do, and therefore the more votes that Sinn Féin get in this election, the more capacity he will have to try and deliver that plan in the negotiations which will follow the election. So it's critical, it's absolutely critical that people, if they want Northern Ireland values, stand up and vote for the DUP. OK,
you say that this isn't about RHI, this election campaign, and you didn't refer to it in your opening statement. Many of the other parties did. But yet this is a scheme that is going to cost Northern Ireland £500 million. £500 million. Well, how can this election not be about that?
Well, already, Mark, that's wrong because, of course, there's cost controls that have been brought into the Assembly and, of course, a public inquiry has been set up as well, which will deal with all of these issues. I was calling for an inquiry back in December. It's critical that a public inquiry now is allowed to take its place because we've had a lot of political smears, even already in this programme, a lot of political smears, a lot of allegations, a lot of rumours, but completely devoid of facts. And what we need are the facts, and I'm very much looking forward to those facts coming forward.
Mike Nesbitt.
It is about the RHI debacle, as Mrs Foster has described it, and it is about competent government and sharing, because people share because they want to share, not because the law says they have to share. And I'm not buying into Mrs Foster's politics of fear. She implies in her opening remarks that only the First Minister can set a direction of travel politically for Northern Ireland. But it is a joint office between the First Minister and the Deputy First Minister. And if you need proof of that, look to what happened to provoke this election. It was the Deputy First Minister, Martin McGuinness, who signed the First Minister's resignation sheet.
Mike Nesbitt, just before we move off the RHI issue with yourself, what started as a referendum on the issue for your party, you have really changed that agenda over the last number of days with this idea of transferring unionist votes to the nationalist community.
I have talked about transferring my personal vote to the SDLP. What I have said to my supporters is vote Ulster Unionist, and then for any candidate that you trust will do the right thing by your community, your constituency and your country. And I think that is the right thing to do, because RHI is not an orange or a green issue. It's an issue of competence, an issue of good government. And I come back to this theme, Mark. For 10 years, the two parties in Stormont Castle who drive the executive have shared space not because they want to, but only because the law says they have to. And they've made that clear in the debating chamber, and I find that deeply depressing.
Colm Eastwood, I'll pick up with you on the issue of RHI in a moment, but just your reaction to what Mike is saying, because it would seem that you're not really buying into this transferring votes to the unionist community the way as Mike is suggesting to transfer votes to the nationalist community.
I don't know where you're getting that, because I've said a few times this week that if you want to vote for change, you should, but you should also transfer for change. And I think that means transferring down the ticket in a cross-community way. We've tried this before. We've tried the DUP and Sinn Féin. We don't even have a government now. We have a bill of £500 million on no solution to stopping it. We got here because the arrogance of Arlene Foster. And let me just say, people in my community had a lot of hope for Arlene Foster. And she's just let us all down. And I think she's let herself down. And we're now in this situation. But if people want something different, they should vote differently. If people want to see cooperation and partnership in government, then they should vote for that. I think it's a very good thing that we're having the conversation about cross-community voting. We've waited a long time for that. It doesn't make me any less of an Irish nationalist. It doesn't make Mike Nesbitt any less of an Ulster Unionist. And to work together in the system that we've created to make sure that we share power willingly and not because we're forced to.
Okay, but I think it's nonsense for Colin to talk about it'll be all rosy in the garden between the UUP and the SDLP. You can't even agree if you want to have a pact or not. The UUP are imploding in relation to the transfer negotiations, which you're already clearly involved with.
Nobody's talked about
so let's not make fake promises to the public, but also I think whenever...
There's a distinction to be made between a pre-election pact, which we do not have, and an aspiration for a post-election partnership, which we do have.
Okay,
your party are imploding in relation to
let's
your
all
stance in relation to
give
transfer
all the
to
panellists a chance to have a say on Naomi Long, picking up on the pact
First of all, it's interesting that Mike doesn't have a pre-election pact in this election because it's one of the few the Ulster Unionists have fought not with a pre-election pact, because I think the Ulster Unionist Party has become like the Lothario of Northern Ireland politics. It's hopped in and out of bed with almost every other political party. But it's good that they're standing on their own 2 feet. It's good that Mike is arguing that people should vote on the basis of the substance of how we do government and not along the kind of tribal lines that previously have. It's a shame he hasn't been able to carry his party with him on that, but I still applaud the fact that he wants to do that, because that is what progress looks like. When Arlene says that it's about who is the biggest party, that is a nonsense. It doesn't matter the size of your mandate unless you can govern with those who are elected alongside you. You cannot exercise your mandate. And ultimately what the people want is good, accountable government. They didn't get that last time with the DUP in pole position, and based on what we're hearing tonight, they're not even fighting the election on the substance of government.
Okay, Michelle O'Neill, what is it we're returning to? We'll come to in more detail in the next part of the programme, but a lot of questions will be asked about why we're in this election, what you're planning to achieve. And I refer back to my former question and the RHI scandal that was brought about. Your colleague Martin O'Muller set up an inquiry into RHI and managed to do that in a very short space of time. You didn't have to pull down the institutions to achieve any of this.
Well, I think the public would beg to differ, and I think that people are very, very alert to why we're in this election, and it's absolutely about RHI. Whenever you listen to or turn on the media every day, you'll hear a different reason as to why this election has been called. But if by no other reason other than the RHI scandal, no government will withstand this allegations of corruption. It just wouldn't be possible, and it wouldn't be tolerable for the public, and rightly so. It's over to people to have their say now. But post that election, when the people have their say, we'll come at the negotiations, and I lead our team into the negotiations with a good will and a good heart, because I do believe in the Assembly. I do believe in delivering for citizens. I think it's absolutely where we should be. But I can only, and our party can only be in government with those people that are wedded to the principles of the Good Friday Agreement. It's about equality. There has to be integrity in your leadership. There has to be making sure you're delivering for all citizens.
But
that's key. That's absolutely key.
But it is joint leadership we're talking about here.
If there's a goodwill, and if there's actually adherence to those principles, then we could have an executive that functions and delivers.
Well, I mean, again, we've had a lot of allegations about all of the things that we've heard about, a lot of political smearing, and that has been going on since December.
Yes, but then why not stand aside, Arlene Foster?
No, let's have the facts. Michelle O'Neill was found guilty by the Lord Chief Justice of breaching the ministerial code and didn't stand aside. Conor Murphy was found guilty by an industrial tribunal of discriminating against a Protestant and didn't stand aside. We've had many aspects and where we could have insisted that somebody should have stood aside. Martin O'Muller, just last year, we said he should step aside, and he didn't step aside, and we didn't collapse the institutions. The reality is, when we have a problem, we work through that problem. And if that problem is the murder of Kevin McGuigan in East Belfast, we worked through that. We worked through all of the difficulties throughout the 10 years, and this is the first time in 10 years that the institutions have been collapsed. And it's all about Gerry Adams' Republican agenda, because he wasn't getting his own way, so he pulled the institutions down. And that is dreadful. It's dreadful for the people of Northern Ireland who want stability, who want to grow the economy, and who want to move
with respect, that is splitting this into a green and orange issue, which it's not really.
Well, can I just say, in relation to the green and orange issue, we all know that this election is going to be very close. We all know that Sinn Féin want to be the largest party.
Is making it a green and orange issue going to achieve anything?
Why is that? Yes, I'm going to give you that, Naomi, now, if you wait a wee second. The interesting point is the talk about the border poll, which Sinn Féin launched in their manifesto yesterday. They want a border poll. And that's where the danger comes.
Okay.
That's where the danger comes of Mike transferring, to other nationalists. Because if you transfer to other nationalists,
let's come to the border poll issue
then you
later.
could actually bring about a border poll.
Naomi Long.
And that's very, very dangerous.
This is absolute nonsense. Let's be very clear. If after this election Sinn Féin were the largest party, and that's a big if because they're well behind the DUP going into the election, but if it happened, nothing in Northern Ireland would change. The border would not move an inch right or left. Nothing would change. So let's put that to one side and stop using fear to try and force people to vote for something. Let's focus. Let's focus.
Okay.
No, and the legislation says nothing about it being decided on the basis of an assembly election. You know that, Arlene. You know that, Arlene. You may not be across the jot and tittle of everything, but you know that for a fact, Arlene.
Okay, Colm Eastwood.
Mark, as Arlene is trying to make this about the border. I'm an Irish nationalist. I'll argue every day to get rid of the border. But this election isn't about that. This election is about an opportunity to waste £500 million and 100 opportunities for Ireland to do something about it. She had every opportunity when this all blew up before Christmas to step aside, to show some humility, but she refused to do it, and she's let herself down in that. And now we're in this situation where we don't even know if we're going to have a government, because all you hear from the DUP and Sinn Féin is that we're going to a long, protracted period of negotiations. I want a government. We need to deal with the crisis that's facing us in the health service. We need to deal with the coming crisis of Brexit.
Okay.
But we don't need to be in long, protracted negotiations. We need to get in and do the business that people out there want us to do. This is a complete distraction. It's a joke, and people are very, very angry about it, and people want us to do the business.
Mike Nesbitt.
The DUP last May, said it's going to be really tight, and they played the politics of fear. Sinn Féin got 28 seats, the DUP beat them by 10 with 38. They're playing the politics of fear again. I don't believe it will be close, but let's play the politics of fear for 1 second. Sinn Féin, let's say they come up top. Michelle O'Neill cannot be First Minister unless Arlene Foster nominates herself as Deputy First Minister. Over to you, Arlene.
Well, of course, we're going into a period of negotiations, as Colm rightly says, after the election. And I think it would be absolute madness to talk about who nominates who, because Michelle has already made it very clear.
But you're not writing off that she's nominated
give a guarantee.
Michelle has already made it very clear that she doesn't support me going back into office. So there will be, unfortunately. I want to get back into devolution. I want to start building the economy again. That's where I have set my politics for this past 10 years, and that's what I want to do. So I'm not looking for a long period of protracted direct rule. I'm looking for progress.
We will talk about what happens next in just a moment. If you want to comment on what you're hearing, well, our Twitter hashtag is Vote17. We're taking a very short break now. Back with you again shortly.
To enjoy Jimmy's steak with or without garlic, find the fresh, quality ingredients you love in-store and online.
Since David was a teenager, he's had an eye for photography. His absolute dream is to go to Iceland and photograph the Northern Lights. You can book everything together on Expedia. Flights, hotels, car hire, activities, all in one place. And so here we are.
Oh, look at that, it's moving. Hey, you got it. Yeah. There you are. Oh, wow.
Atoll Protected.
Heather's here from B&Q with smashing half-term deals this weekend. This Bodrum grey wood effect laminate flooring is now just £8 per square metre. And get a free accessory set when you buy this Bosch drill for only £35.
If there's anything else I can help you with, just ask.
Come to B&Q for a great price and great advice.
Baby.
You behaving yourself?
Oh, yeah.
The moment we label this terrorism, everything changes.
Are there more bombs?
If they hit New York or Washington, what happens then?
Are there more bombs?
We gotta find these guys before they do this to somebody else.
Every inch of this city is getting searched. We're tracking reports on his way to New York.
Super black Mercedes SUV. I need backup down.
Clock is ticking. The world is watching.
Patriots Day.
If you forget to wear your seatbelt, just that once, ask yourself, who are you prepared to kill? Family? Friend? someone special you love. Without a seatbelt, it only takes one trip to kill. No seatbelt, no excuse.
At Benson's, we know you're at your best after a great night's sleep. And right now, in our Big Sleep sale, there's incredible savings on a huge range of beds and mattresses. Like this Harlington bed frame at our best ever price of £199. And the Sensiform 2-drawer divan bed with an amazing £300 off. Now only £399. But hurry, offers must end soon. Be your best every day with Benson's.
The most powerful memories are made of adventure. The Nissan X-Trail with the new high-powered 2-litre diesel engine, built to build families.
It's June, and preparations are underway for the show season.
Summer is based around showing
best crack ever, like.
And our farmers are having to find creative ways to make profits.
Price of a hill lamb is very low. It's costing us to shear the sheep. So you have to have some other income outside of that.
Rare Breed, Tuesday at 7:30 on UTV.
Hello there, welcome back to the UTV election debate, and with me representatives of the 5 larger political parties. And for a link to the full list of candidates standing for election on March the 2nd, then go to our website at itv.com/UTV. Now, just what it is that we're electing our politicians to is still uncertain. In theory, it should be another, albeit smaller, assembly. But as we've heard tonight, there are big divisions between our political parties. So how do our politicians plan to resolve their differences and get the Assembly back up and running? That's our next topic. Michelle O'Neill, what prospect is there of the institutions getting back up and running anytime soon?
I think there's every prospect, Mark. I think particularly if people approach the post-election, because obviously it's up to the people to have their say, and then who they return. It's up to us all to go into the post-election negotiation to have a full and frank conversation about how we're going to go forward. But we need to do that, and I will approach, and our party will approach these negotiations with a good heart, with wanting to find a way forward, because we do believe in the institutions. No one has worked harder than Martin McGuinness to make the institutions work, to deliver for citizens. I've just embarked as Health Minister on and grasped the nettle on the transformation of the health service. These are the things that the public want to see us talking about, and that's the issues that I want to be involved with.
Okay.
But you can only be in government with partners that are wedded to equality, respect, and have full integrity and command public confidence.
Well, let me bring you in on that part. And you talk about hospital waiting lists. This election is costing the taxpayer around £5 to £6 million, which would, in quick maths, what, a sixth of the cost that it would take you to make those changes in the hospital waiting list. That's £31 million that you're asking all the parties to agree to.
But this election's also about a corruption in the heart of government of £500 million. So
allegations of corruption.
Absolutely, and I think the public need to now have their say in relation to all of that. But after the election, I mean, it's still so important that we make these institutions work. So we'll come at it from that basis.
After that election, will you go into government before the RHI report is delivered?
We can go into government, surely, but I said clearly last week that I couldn't go into government or support Arlene Foster in the position of First or Deputy First Minister whilst the investigation is ongoing. The public need answers, and they deserve the answers, and that's what the investigation's about. It was Sinn Féin who brought about the public inquiry. And I listened earlier to Arlene talk about how they've stopped the flow of money. It hasn't. There's been a mechanism put on the table that will stop the flow of money for one day, but there's £85,000 going out the door every day, gone up in smoke, and that money could be used in the health service.
Colin Eastwood, we could be facing a very real prospect then of protracted period of negotiations and possibly even direct rule.
Well, let's hope not. If people vote for that, that's what they're going to get. If people vote for the DUP and Sinn Féin, I think we are heading towards a protracted amount of time in terms of negotiations. But if you vote for other people, we have an opportunity to form a government, no matter how difficult all these issues are. People who are willing to work together, who want to work together, who've proven they can work together in the past, to get over some of these humps. And it's interesting to hear, by the way, just Michelle talking about Sinn Féin brought about the public inquiry. It was the opposition that brought about the public inquiry. Sinn Féin opposed the public inquiry day after day after day after day until they finally realised they were in such a bad position that they had to support it. But thank God we do have a public inquiry.
Who brought forward the public inquiry?
Under immense pressure. You opposed it.
No.
You opposed it.
The opposition could stand in the corner, stamp their feet, shout from the sidelines, do all of that. Rhetoric. You couldn't do anything. Martin McGuinness dealt with it.
You opposed it. You opposed it. You opposed it. You opposed it. You also didn't vote in a motion of censure against the first.
Okay, columnist Michelle O'Neill, thank you.
You ran out of the chamber when you had the opportunity to vote.
It is a matter of fact that Sinn Féin published proposals for something that wasn't a public inquiry before they were forced into a public inquiry. But I am not fatalistic about the result. I do not believe that the top two will come back. I sense on the doorstep there is a mood to vote for change. And
but every political party is going to say that, surely.
No, this is different. I have been campaigning over the last 6 years on the doorstep. This is significantly different. And people are talking more, they're more engaged about politics. They do not want more of the same. We don't have to go into negotiations. It just depends who you put into Stormont Castle. We have a 5-point plan to clean up Stormont. That's things like returning petitions of concern to their original use of protecting minorities, not individual party members. We're going to make ministers more accountable. Would you believe an MLA is more accountable than a minister? And the big thing, Mark, is to get back to
Mike Nesbitt.
Back to the values of '98. That said in that document that there was a chance for a fresh start built on reconciliation, tolerance, building mutual trust and showing mutual respect, and that's what I want.
OK, Naomi Long, what are your red lines in all of this? If we take ourselves back to last year, you went in with a list of ideas that you wanted to see implemented in order to take the Justice Ministry portfolio. You didn't get those. You didn't have the Justice Ministry portfolio. What do you want this time round?
Well, we want the same things. The 5 issues that we raised with the First and Deputy First Minister at that time are 5 of the issues that have actually brought us to this point where the government wasn't able to continue. It was about things like the abuse of the petition of concern and the arrogance that the DUP have shown towards all other parties, not just their partner in government, but all of the other parties in the chamber over the last number of months. It was about tackling the issue of legacy matters, for example, ongoing paramilitarism in our communities, which is not being tackled effectively by the last executive. And it's also about looking at the nature of our society, wanting to reform our society through things like integrated education so that we can actually build a more shared future. And if we can get those things progressed, then we are willing to do business with any party. But it will be the kind of government that we want, held to high standards of openness, transparency and accountability. And if we can't get that, then we will not go into government. It's a simple offer to any of the parties here tonight. We can work with anyone, but we will not work with anyone who is not committed to that openness and transparency.
Arlene Foster.
Well, thank you. And I think it's a little wrong of colleagues to talk about their red lines when not a single vote has been cast as yet. I think that this election is about the future direction of Northern Ireland.
Okay.
It's probably the most important
election
since 1998.
Let me just press you, Arlene
Foster, that everybody votes.
Let me just press you on one of the red lines that you talk about. Michelle O'Neill has said that she is not prepared to lead her party into government while you remain the DUP leader. What's your reaction to that?
Well, of course, it's not a matter for either Michelle O'Neill, Gerry Adams or indeed anybody else in Sinn Féin to tell the Unionist electorate who should be the lead party and who indeed should lead that party. I mean, it would come to something if, and we used to hear all the time in the 70s and 80s and the 90s, Sinn Féin used to always parrot the line about they had a mandate, it had to be respected. Well, what about Unionists? What about their mandate? What about who they choose to lead? And I think that's critically important. And of course, the people will speak. And the people will speak very soundly, I think. And we will come back to a situation where we then go into negotiations and we then need to put it all back together again.
But that's precisely why our ask, Arlene, is not about individuals, about people or about parties. It's about policy and practice, because we can work with parties that are willing to work with us. We've done it with all of the parties in here in the past and we're willing to do it again. But the standard of government has to improve. That's not our demand. That's the demand of the people we're meeting when we're at
Michelle O'Neill, it sounds very plausible what Arlene Foster is saying. You know, why should your party be allowed to tell her party how to lead itself in government?
Well, I mean, I can absolutely agree. I don't believe it's for me to say who will lead the DUP, but it's absolutely within Sinn Féin's gift to decide who we go into government with. And I've said that whilst the investigation is ongoing, we will not go into government with Arlene Foster. It can't be more clear.
And wouldn't it have been much better to have had the inquiry set up in December than have had to have waited to the very end of January to have had a public inquiry put into place?
And that
tell
the public about
the inquiry
this when you knew
is
about it.
critically important. The inquiry is now in place. Look, Naomi, I said I was very open about saying that I would go to the PAC,
please.
Yes, even though there was no convention. I would go to any inquiry. I have nothing to hide.
Okay, let's try and move.
I have nothing to hide.
I'm very much looking forward to no public inquiry, Arlene. He said there would be no public inquiry in December. And when he said there would be no public inquiry in December, then you flip-flopped on that. That's a good thing. I'm not complaining.
Colm Eastwood.
Well, you know, we can talk away about all of the issues that have brought us to this point, but what we need to do now is figure out a way through it. When I'm speaking to people in the doors, they're talking about the health waiting list, and I'm prepared to take politics out of health, like I've said before, and work with whatever minister is there. But unfortunately, we don't even have a budget for health. We need an emergency budget to deal with all the problems that are in that department. We also need to understand Brexit is coming. If anybody doesn't think that is the biggest challenge to face Northern Ireland since partition, they are mad. And we're sitting here squabbling. They had 6 or 7 months after Brexit, after the Brexit referendum, and not one paper was put to the British government.
Colm Eastwood, we'll talk about Brexit in the next part of the programme. Mike Nesbitt.
Well, I go back to the point that you have two parties running the government who really don't want to share, but only do it because there's a legislative duty on them to do so. We, as the Ulster Unionist Party, would be willing partners understanding that the only way to move Northern Ireland forward is to work with people with whom you have differences. Now, I am a unionist. Nationalists are not going away. Republicans are not going away. But there are, within that community, people who want Northern Ireland to work. And that's what I want. And I measure it in one word. If you're looking for one word, it's prosperity, both economic prosperity and also in terms of well-being. And I make no apology for saying we should be returning to mental health and well-being. I asked Michelle O'Neill, as Health Minister, to support me in appointing an independent champion at a cost of not one penny to the public purse. And I'm disappointed you didn't support me.
Let me press you on that issue. You talk about willing champions. The Ulster Unionist Party were willing participants in the executive for 9 of the last 10 years, but yet some might say that nothing was achieved during that period.
And that's why I made the decision to come out. And I commend the 16 of us who made that decision, because I said to them, we're taking a jump into the unknown here. It could be that we leave the DUP and Sinn Féin as the two parties of government, which is how it turned out. And I warned my people that they could find a way of doing business, and next time we went looking for a vote, people might say, I tell you what, actually, I'm going to reward the government because I've liked what they've done. Little did I imagine it would only take 8 months for them to fall apart so very, very, very badly that we're back at the polls. We were prepared to put the country first and risk our own careers, and that's why I'm so critical of Arlene Foster, because all she had to do was stand aside.
I'll bring you back in a second, Arlene Foster. Colm Eastwood, picking up on the points that Mike Nesbitt was making there, surely it makes more sense to have some sort of a link between your two parties if you're going to remain in continual opposition, because the other point is some might say that Sinn Féin have run away with the SDLP close over the last 40 years.
Well, every time we say something Sinn Féin copied, I suppose that's a compliment. So we're very glad now to have Sinn Féin on the ground that we've been on for a long time. It's unfortunate that it takes them so long to catch up. We're not running for opposition, we're running for government. We want to be in government, we want to deal with the challenges that are faced, but it needs to be a government that can work together. We were told in November that everything was fine, that the DUP and Sinn Féin were handling everything, that this is what delivery looks like, and then all of a sudden the thing collapsed. When we went into the negotiations last May, nobody told us about the scale and extent of the black hole that RHI was creating. The only meeting we couldn't get was with the Finance Department. I wonder why that was.
Naomi Long, when it comes to what happens after March the 2nd, what side of the fence will you be on? Will it be the government side or the opposition side?
Well, I've made it clear the basis on which we will make that decision, and I'm making it clear not because I want to draw lines in the sand or make red lines, but because I want the public to be clear about what they're voting for when they vote for Alliance. And we've been very clear that if we get open, transparent, accountable government that isn't about carving up power but is about sharing power, and government that is focused on delivering on issues such as health and education, getting a budget in place and dealing with the challenge of Brexit, then we will want to be part of that government, and I make no apology for that. But if that government is not able to deliver, if we don't get the standard of government that we need, then we will go into opposition and we will hold that government to account, and we will do it fairly. Because even in the last mandate, we did not criticise the government where we felt that they were getting things right, and we won't do that. We will not be destructive, but we will be constructive in our opposition if that's where we end up.
Thank you. Michelle O'Neill.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because, as I said earlier, when you listen to Mike and to Colin, they talk about how things will be all rosy in the garden under their scenario. When you look at the last 9 years, the SDLP have never voted for a budget, so they wanted the luxury of being in the executive. All the good news stories that goes with holding their department, but then voted against every budget. Absolutely run away into the corner and hid whenever tough decisions were needed.
The first time Sinn Féin at the finance ministry, they couldn't even produce a budget.
Let Michelle make her point.
You can try and talk on me if you want, but being a government requires leadership. It requires good governance, and it requires doing the right thing by the public. It requires governing on the basis of equality, and it also involves taking tough decisions. Whenever it came to taking tough decisions, these people, the two men on each side of me, have run away into the corner and stopped their feet.
Do we have a government now, Michelle?
Michelle,
do we have a government now?
Thank you. The questions will continue after the break. We have lots to talk about, including, of course, Brexit, as Colin Eastwood referred to. Meantime, if you'd like to comment on what you're hearing from the politicians, well, our Twitter hashtag is Vote17. So another short break. We're back after that with Brexit. See you shortly.
Sometimes I feel I'm just a lost kid, stumbling through these towns, stuck in between highways. Nothing feels the same.
My voice is my password.
At HSBC, you can now use your voice as your secure telephone banking password. Onwards.
I'm the white slice man. I feel very lucky to be in this job.
In all my years working for Tesco, I would say can't be anything more satisfying than watching flour, yeast and water turn into perfectly formed loaves.
I eat probably too much bread.
A fresh loaf, the smell, the aromas, you can't turn it down really.
If I'm not making it, I'm eating it, yeah.
If you're not in love with it, you ain't going to produce what you really want to produce at the end.
Food Love Stories, brought to you by Tesco.
This year on Sky Atlantic. Incredible award-winning drama. The biggest stars. A new big screen drama every month of the year. World-class storytelling exclusively on Sky Atlantic.
Marcus, you called Direct Line exactly 2 hours and 37 minutes ago. You've got an uncontrollable leak, and you've tried to stop it yourself. The bad news is that Joey here is going to have to remove your ball cock. Huh? The good news is that Joey's an emergency plumber, and that's covered under your Direct Line Home Plus insurance. I'll leave you two to it.
Love big savings. Love Stena Line. Save up to 15% when you take your car to Britain. Drive over and relax in our pure Nordic spa. There's even free Wi-Fi and free movies too. Love to ski. Shush down real snow and enjoy a day trip to Snow Factor from just £50 per person. Love to shop. Treat yourself to a day trip to Scotland from an amazing £10 per person. Book today at stenaline.co.uk.
Anticipating, touching, seeing, hearing, feeling, moving, sweeping, escaping. Everything you get from a sports car. Jaguar XF.
Since I have you back, I got you a new partner. Transfer from Texas. He's worked homicide and vice.
Martin Riggs. We're gonna make a great team.
Boom, boom, boom. Brand new series, Lethal Weapon, starts Friday the 3rd of March on UTV. Set a reminder now.
Hello there, welcome back. It's the UTV election debate, and with me, representatives of the 5 larger parties. Arlene Foster, if I could just come back to you on some of the issues that we were discussing before the break, would you care to respond?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mike has said that he left the executive and then people are now going to get their chance to decide whether that was right or wrong. They got their chance last May, of course, to decide whether that was right or wrong, because Mike left the executive in September of 2015 after the very brutal murder of Kevin McGuigan in East Belfast. And that was one of those instances where we stayed in government, we worked through the difficulties, and we came out the other end with the fresh start. And actually, this whole rewriting of this past 9 months has to be challenged. And I note that Colm has mentioned the fact that we were writing articles together in November. That's absolutely right, because we were getting on with the business. Draft programme for government was agreed. We had agreed in relation to the Bengoa report that the whole executive was behind those health reforms. So this characterisation that things had been terrible for a long time is just not true. Well, and anybody objectively looking at it can find out that it isn't true.
Let's then focus on some of the other big events during the 9 months of the last executive, because some commentators would argue that Brexit and the UK's decision to leave the European Union was the catalyst which led to the major breakdown between the DUP and Sinn Féin. The reality, of course, is that Brexit is on course to happen, and what impact that will have on Northern Ireland is really anyone's guess at this time. Again, our politicians, you're proving them yourselves to be deeply divided. Colm Eastwood, you talk about a special status. What is this special status?
Well, it doesn't really matter what you call it, but what I want is for people to be able to move and do business across the island of Ireland and into the European Union and many, many other things. We need to protect what we have in terms of our membership of the European Union, our membership of the single market, the customs union, because Europe has been very good for us. That's why a majority of people voted to remain in the European Union. But we have a massive job of work to do now to defend Northern Ireland, to defend our citizens against the ravages of what is fast becoming a hard Tory Brexit. There's a 300-mile border across Ireland. There's 260 border crossings. How can anybody realistically expect to defend that and to control that border? We need to have an open flow of people and goods across the border to allow our businesses and our people to thrive.
Michelle O'Neill.
Brexit's absolutely catastrophic for the island of Ireland, for the all-island economy. It's going to undermine the Good Friday Agreement and the principles that undermine all of that. So it is catastrophic. It is a serious issue. It is going to be the major conversation for the next number of years.
What are you going to do about it then?
I believe, and I've made my case very clear, and I went on a diplomatic offensive in Europe, talking to all the European leaders, because I listened to the British government. They're not going to dictate their terms of negotiation about what happens post-Brexit. So I think it's laughable to listen to them to say that they're going to demand X, Y, Z. They can't. So we need to talk to the other leaders out in Europe about our special status here. But also I think we need very clearly the Irish government to step up to the plate, because they need to act in the national interest. As Colm said, the majority of people on this part of the island voted to remain within Europe, and we know that's the right thing that needs to happen.
OK, Mike Nesbitt, where is your party on Brexit? Because some might say you're all over the place here.
Absolutely not. The Ulster Unionist Party have got our heads around the fact that we are coming out of the European Union, for better and worse. And I say for better or worse because there is no vision and no plan from the Northern Ireland Executive. Anybody watching this programme can go to the internet and can bring up the UK government's white paper on Brexit. They can look at the Scottish government's proposals. They can look at a document from the Welsh government or the Dublin government. They can also read the Ulster Unionist Party on a vision for Northern Ireland outside the European Union. But when they look for the Northern Ireland Executive's document, they will find a blank page. We need urgently to decide what our priorities are, and critically whether those complement or clash the UK government's. And there will be clashes, for example, on agriculture. We have identified 10 key asks, beginning with infrastructure, with all those billions being repatriated from Europe. And the most important infrastructure initiative we need is on energy. And there's a talk of a north-south interconnector, which if we don't have, the lights go off. And that's between an EU and a non-EU country.
OK, Naomi Long, I'll come to you in a moment. But Arlene Foster, I want to get a word on you, because you, with Sinn Féin heading up the executive, failed to produce this white paper when the Scottish and the Welsh have done it, produced an agreement to try and deal with the issue of Brexit, but yet Your two parties couldn't even do that.
Well,
You're asking people to come back and vote for you again.
That's actually wrong. We wrote to the Prime Minister back in August with very clear priorities for where we wanted to be. Look, it's no secret. I voted to leave the European Union. Martin McGuinness wanted to remain within the European Union. We came together after the referendum and said we would work for the best interests of the people of Northern Ireland. At least that was the priority at the time. Now, I think commentators are right. I think Brexit is probably one of the issues that pushed Gerry Adams Sinn Féin out of the executive because they can't deal with these issues.
Arlene, did your party receive a payment to advertise pro-Brexit stance right across England?
Yeah, how much did you donate to the Leave campaign?
Well, look, here's the reality. We registered.
How much did you donate to the Leave campaign?
Can you give me a space to answer it? Of course, I'll answer it. We registered as one of the parties campaigning to leave the European Union, and we received donations. Those donations have been given to the Electoral Commission and will be very clear for everybody to see.
Okay, who are the donations from? Can you tell us who the donations are from? Sinn Féin didn't even
register to be part of the Remain campaign.
Can you tell us here and now who the donations are from?
Yes, I can. They're from an organisation in England that wants to see the Union kept and to make sure that we can have a United Kingdom, because it was a national issue. And these people talk about the Northern Ireland wanting to be taken separately from the rest of the UK. This, of course, was a national question. It was asked on a national basis, and we are leaving the European Union together.
You also got your regional answer where 56% of people voted to remain. And that has to be respected.
My job as a politician is to represent the people who elected me here in Northern Ireland. That's what the job of the Alliance Party is to do. And it's clear that the majority of people in Northern Ireland wanted to remain within the European Union. I accept the result of that referendum. We have no choice but to accept it. But we have got to fight for a result in terms of Brexit that will protect Northern Ireland from its worst effects. And I have to say that, Mike, with all due respect, your party failed at the first hurdle, as did yours, Arlene, because you wouldn't support an amendment in Westminster that would have ensured that any Brexit was compliant with the Good Friday Agreement. Now, when you do things like that, you undermine. Well, I'm sorry, it does have an impact. It has an impact on the Good Friday Agreement because it affects things like border controls, which were part and parcel of that agreement. Free movement across these islands, part and parcel of that. And the fact that we have an invisible border, this is not just a practical challenge. And others have talked about business and about the economy and all of those things, and I concur with that entirely. This is also a political issue. Borders in Ireland are sensitive, and people should show more sensitivity to them.
People need to understand, if we go back to a situation where we harden that border any more than it is, then people need to understand we have a very real political problem here.
Yeah, because it damages your dreams and aspirations of United Ireland.
I actually don't think it does, but it's not about that. It's about allowing people who voted for the Good Friday Agreement in the full knowledge that we will be members of the European Union to close that down, to take that away, to put up a barrier between us and the Republic of Ireland is economically stupid. It's also politically damaging, and people should understand that this is a very dangerous place that we're in. And if we're not prepared to get a government up and running on day one, we're never going to tackle this issue. This issue is what people really, really care about. It's the most dangerous thing to face us since partition.
Michelle O'Neill, some might say that the real reason why you pulled the plug on Stormont was because of Brexit. Because basically, Northern Ireland is heading in a different direction from the Republic of Ireland. What do you say to that?
I can't say it loud and clear enough. The executive has fallen because of RHI scandal, because of allegations of corruption in the heart of government. That's what this election is about. But in relation to Brexit, the British government don't care about the will of the people in the north of Ireland. We are collateral damage. They have absolutely no interest. This is about England. This is about the south of England, even more so. And when Mike talks about his wonderful paper, the British government weren't even giving the executive a place at the negotiating table. But again, it's probably irrelevant because they're not going to dictate the pace. They're not going to dictate their terms. It'll be the rest of Europe. So I'm on a diplomatic offensive right across Europe to talk to all the leaders that actually are going to have a say, because I'm actually about doing something practical about it.
Mike Nesbitt.
I return to the fact at least we have a paper, and I delivered it directly into the hands of the Prime Minister, Mrs May, and to the Leader of the House of Commons and many others.
She doesn't care.
Oh, I think they do care.
Read it, Mike. She clearly hasn't read it.
You have to get in and argue your case. It's not about, we will not be at the negotiating table. It will be the British government and the EU 27. What we have to do is influence the British government, and we also have to influence the Irish government. And that is why I met with Enda Kenny many, many weeks ago, and with Charlie Flanagan. And yes, we have engaged with the Irish government.
Will you be going tomorrow?
No more cheap shots. Thank you very much.
Will you be going tomorrow to the All-Ireland Brexit Forum to have these discussions, not only politically, but to have them with business
thank you, Naomi.
and with other people?
Naomi Long. Arlene Foster.
Well, I think it's very clear that the DUP is the best placed party to get the good deal for Northern Ireland, especially given our influence at Westminster and our influence with the government. And we will be using that influence. It's working out very well.
Because you're closing up.
Very well. In terms of the triangular relationship that we have now with Dublin and London and Belfast to deal with the Brexit issues, I've been working with Enda Kenny as well in relation to those issues. I'll continue to work with those issues. But of course, it would be much better if we had an executive up and running so that we could have our seat back at the JMC again. OK,
thank you very much indeed for that. We're almost out of time for this evening's debate. But just to close, I suppose it's a chance for you to really sum up where we have been going this evening. And a lot of issues, of course, to be discussed. In around 30 seconds, Colm Eastwood, if you could tell us why you think that people should go out on March the 2nd and why they should vote for the SDLP.
Well, it's absolutely obvious now that this is a very important election, and people have an opportunity to vote for something new. Vote for partners who want to work together, who can work together, who can begin to tackle all these very difficult problems, or vote for people who are going to take us to direct rule. In my view, if you vote Arlene, if you vote Michelle, you get Theresa. We're heading to direct rule if that's what happens. So people have a choice. Come out and vote on May the 2nd and make change happen. We have a very real chance to change the nature of our politics here.
Colm Eastwood, thank you very much indeed. Naomi Long, why do you think that people should go out on March the 2nd and vote for Alliance?
Well, I think it's clear from the debate here this evening that there are major challenges facing Northern Ireland, and we need parties who are willing to work together to face those challenges, to take difficult decisions and to make a difference for the entire community. If you want a party in government that can represent the best interests of the entire community, then choose a party that already does and vote Alliance and make change for good.
OK, Naomi Long, thank you very much indeed for that. Arlene Foster, if I could come to you next, why is it you think the people on March the 2nd should vote for the DUP?
Well, on the 2nd of March, the people of Northern Ireland have a very clear choice to make. They have a choice between Gerry Adams' Sinn Féin and his radical agenda for Northern Ireland, or for the DUP, who will stand up for the people of Northern Ireland. It's a very clear choice. I know that it's one that we shouldn't have had to make in this very unnecessary election, but unfortunately, that's where we are. A vote for any other Unionist party, of course, will allow Sinn Féin to be the lead party for Northern Ireland.
Arlene Foster, thank you very much. Michelle O'Neill, why is it you think then that people should go out and vote for Sinn Féin when it comes to March the 2nd?
Well, the public are very aware of what this election is about, and it's about the RHI scandal. I want to lead our party into government, make sure we share power with people who are wedded to the principles of the Good Friday Agreement. We need to bring society into the new modern era. We need to stop denying people their rights and entitlements. That's the society that people want us. That's the conversation they want us to have in government. Government's about leadership. Our party will continue to show the leadership. We're proud of our track record in government. We want to do an awful lot more. On March the 2nd, people have an opportunity to stand very firmly on the ground of equality, respect and integrity.
OK, Michelle O'Neill, thank you very much indeed. And finally, Mike Nesbitt, can you tell us why you think that people should go out and vote for the Ulster Unionist Party on March the 2nd?
Because the result is not a foregone conclusion. The DUP and Sinn Féin have had 10 years and frankly they've fluffed it. No programme for government, no budget, 10 years of disappointments and debacles. I am ready and the Ulster Unionist Party is ready, and if you give us the opportunity we will deliver better for you, and it will be measured very simply. We are a party in the Ulster Unionists who will put the country first and ahead of the petty party interests that you've seen from the others in Stormont Castle over the last decade.
Mike Nesbitt, thank you. And that was the UTV election debate. My thanks to Mike Nesbitt, Michelle O'Neill, Arlene Foster, Naomi Long and Colm Eastwood. Now, this evening's debate, I'm sure, will continue on social media. Our Twitter hashtag is Vote17. The smaller parties will get their turn to debate the main issues next Thursday night here on UTV. And for a link to the full list of candidates standing for election on March the 2nd, then go to our website at itv.com/UTV. Well, that is it from us for now. Thanks to my guests and, of course, to you at home for watching. From all of us here, bye-bye.